Teacher candidates will know the definitions of pepper, draw the map, binder control, and 100%.
Excellent. We can do the next one.
Teacher candidates will analyze the strengths and weaknesses of the Lamov techniques listed above.
I like it. Last one. Josie.
Teacher candidates will develop ideas about the implementation of the Lamont techniques listed above.
Excellent. But before we get to all of that, review time.
Everybody stand up, please. Okay, we're going to play a little game. We're going to ask you some questions, and if you get it right, you get to sit down.
Oh.
If you don't, you have to stand. So, first question. Molly, true or false? Techniques that we've discussed must be used individually to be effective.
False.
Good, sit down. Number 2, slant. Everybody know what that is? Connor, what does the S stand for?
Sit up.
Great, sit down. Michelle, what does the L stand for?
Listen.
Great. Catherine, what does the A stand for?
Ask and answer questions.
Great. Patrick, what does the N stand for? All right, somebody else, Mackenzie.
Nod.
All right.
Nod
Nod your head. Okay, good. Okay, Katie, what's the T? Great.
Good job. Okay, Jacob, what part of class time is best used for the hook?
Again. Yes. Nice.
Bradley, please name one drawback of double plan.
It's hard.
Amy, name one drawback of double plan.
It's hard.
It could take a long time to clear.
Brad is right, Brad. How does Dr. Carpenter demonstrate post-it in this class?
That posting me effective.
That's correct. Thank you.
What technique spices up the room with music, dance, and lights?
Thanks. Jay-Z, true or false? Check for understanding involves applying data sooner rather than later.
Sure.
Sit down.
Allie, define stretching.
When you make the student go beyond the basic answers.
That's
To
right.
stretch the answer.
Great.
Me. Name one of the key signals or keys of seat signals.
They must be nonverbal. Sarah, name one of the categories of right is right. Sarah, can you name one of the categories of right is right?
By categories, do you mean ways of getting people to the right
You can use your
answer?
notes.
Hold out for all the way.
Yes.
That's great.
Excellent. Excellent.
Okay, Mike. Shut. True or false? Cold call can be used for a punishment / reward system.
Can or should it?
Should it be true or false?
Should.
Can it be? Should it be?
Now, a lot of people confuse this with cold call, which is understandable. The difference between cold call and pepper is you actually have, the students have the ability to raise their hand if they know it, and you can call on them. Cold call basically is ignoring hands and just basically calling out whoever. Because no one was raising their hand, we just decided, hey, we're just gonna call on people.
Could somebody read what the student would be doing? Notice double.
The student answers question as a part of a group of students receiving teacher questions quickly and unpredictably.
Great. Everybody feel like they got that? Right? Okay, good. So, two strengths of pepper that I think are good. So it's a quick and efficient gauge of learning, informal assessment kind of. And for, especially for, I guess, younger high school kids and kids, it feels like a game, you know? It's like, oh, I know the answer, I want to say it, but maybe you can't, that might be kind of encouraging you to answer some questions. And also, it's just, it'll encourage more participation.
All right, well, some of the weaknesses. It's limited in review. You can't really go very in-depth in conversation. For example, in cold call, there really is no limit to the kind of level or the sophistication of the question that you can ask a student. With pepper, since it's so fast-paced, you really can only focus on very fundamental questions. And then also, it can, as you can probably see, it can spotlight individual student weaknesses, especially when you have students standing up. Sometimes it can make people feel isolated, like Michael Shutt did. So.
It was intentional. I wanted. Sorry, Mike. Okay.
All right, did everyone get the strengths and weaknesses, or do you all still need a little bit of time? No? Yes?
I noticed that Allie said in her form post that she really liked this one. You still like it, Allie? Now that you went through it?
I'm not, I mean, I agree with that there are strengths and weaknesses.
Okay, good.
But I think that it could be implemented well.
Okay, great. All right. So, a lot of you noticed when you came in the room that it was a lot different and it seemed to disturb a few of you. Can anybody tell me what a cartographer is? A map maker. Okay, so not only as teachers are we technicians and managers and mentors and everything, we're also cartographers in our own way. And it just happens that Lamar designed this layout in the book, and that's why we use it today. So the technique is called draw the map, and there's a definition that you should have in your notes. It means making space planning part of your lesson plan. Yeah. Making space planning part of your lesson plan. So, a few things you want to keep in mind when you're using draw the map. You want to be able to walk comfortably around the room, no matter what the lesson is. And if you switch layout, you need to be very intentional about how the classroom is going to be set up. So you don't at the beginning of the year make a great layout that's going to work for a lot of lessons, but then just not change it when the setting needs to change in order to make the learning happen better. The example in the book is a lot of teachers use like positive desks, but the teacher has them take notes, so kids are like kind of like leaning over, like looking, you know. Also, you may not be able to see what they're doing at all times. So, last one about draw the map is it's not just about where the seats are; it's about what is on the walls in the classroom. And you're going to want to use both tools and student work. So scaffolding tools. A few examples might be pictures that go along with vocabulary words for the week. A few important steps for adding fractions or phrase starters for discussions and agreeing or disagreeing with someone. And for student work, you don't want to just put an essay on the wall that says, "Great job, Timmy." You wanted to say something specific that the other students can model, like, "Great job using a clear topic sentence in that paragraph, Timmy." So something that's actually useful that helps staff and students. Everybody got that? So we're going to do a little group activity, but don't move yet. The science and math people are going to be together. History, music, and English. English is going to be a large group, so.
One group?
Yes. So you're going to make a map for a certain scenario, and you have a minute to plan it. You guys go. We'll start timing as soon as you get in your group. So we'll give you the scenario as soon as you're in the group. The music.
English is all our review.
Sarah? Sarah?
Okay, so you give a scenario. Just have the first day of a middle school band class.
Yes.
The first day.
Okay, I can say okay, master names are on the I don't know what
We don't have a scenario.
You guys are part of English, right? Okay. What they're doing is has to have right up. So you have
Very first day, you have a story. And so it's like, and this is our like,
Right here, you're gonna crash the middle. After that, I like, no.
And the colors are fabulous.
So do you like the 2 rows?
Yeah.
Ah,
And these are the
wait,
note
make sure they're
takers.
in between so they can see. Come on now.
Ooh, yes,
No.
Staggered.
Just put it.
Yeah, that's the teacher. That's okay. Good. Stagger 'em. Good. That might may be difficult to navigate. Leave yourself a path in and out.
You don't need pads. They're gonna behave.
What if someone got something out?
Practice slam.
Short transitions.
okay, appreciate your thoughts. Okay, who would like to share first?
I believe this group would like to share first.
Okay.
So our scenario is a Socratic discussion in an English class, and K-Bane has a little graphic of what we decided to put together.
Killing it.
So this is it's also like a terminology known in English. It can be used a lot called like fishbowl. It's kind of what the setup is. Basically, you have 2 circles, an inner and outer. The idea is that you're having a group discussion about some major theme or something you're talking about. So it's the interior group that's having the discussion, and they're all paired with someone in the outside group, and the outside group is taking notes, letting them know like you're really good at showing new ideas if you never have a source to back it up or something like that. There's usually like a halftime where they talk, give new advice, and then they finish up, and then you also have a chance they can switch positions.
What about the other English group?
We're right here. Okay. So we drew this little pinwheel diagram, which is another setup where what happens with this is these 4 desks in the middle are the 4 main speakers, and then they take turns rotating. So they're split up into 4 different groups. So the way that we've seen it are these are 3 different authors, 3 different books, and then a provocateur,
Whoa!
which just means that they kind of keep the discussion going with provocative questions, if you will. And so they switch in and out of this middle circle.
What about the music?
Yeah, the music's a little different.
And Sarah.
Well, our scenario was the first day of a middle school band classroom, and we came up with an idea inspired by one of the band teacher at my cooperating school or whatever. And we were thinking on the first day of a middle school band classroom, when you think of a band, you think they're usually pretty huge, but middle school bands are pretty small. And what she does is she tries to keep her classroom as open as possible. And so the idea that we came up with is to have the chairs stacked against the wall. And so when the students come in, then you get them to stand in their section. So there's tape on the floor in arcs. And then, because you never know, like each classroom will have a different layout. You might have 6 trombones and 1 saxophone, and that's pretty unusual. So if you have them on the first day come in and then put them in sections, they can put tape on the floor, and then every day they know where to put their chair. Each class will have a different tape color.
Like it.
Excellent. Alright. History, what you got?
So we had to design a classroom for like if we were doing, let me use yours, it's bigger, that's close enough. If we were doing like a simulation, Patrick's gonna redraw it a little bigger so you all can see. The idea is our simulation, so we're doing like if we're doing the writing of the Constitution. So we would set our desks up kind of like this, if you could sort of see it. There's pods of desks, like there's one at the back and one on each side. And then in the front, there's like a podium and a table, so you can have a discussion. And then if you're doing like the Constitution, one person can kind of come to the front, and if they have doing some sort of role playing, then they could like talk about their points. The only weakness we could really talk about was like in the back, those kids might be a little less engaged than people who are kind of towards the front. So it is a little separated. So.
And the desks are only only 2 to 3 rows deep, so that you're able to have visual on what the kids are doing in their seats. It was really good for keeping track of cell phones.
And finally, our math and science.
We were really creative. We had like a small group project or something like that. And so we first talked about like grouping them into like clumps of 4. So kind of like the 2 desks and the 2 desks here. And then we were talking about like we want to make sure that we can see everybody. So then we were like, what about if we're in the setup that we're in right now? And so they can face the front when the teacher's talking and then turn around and they still have the tables to work on. But it makes it easier for them to be able to see everywhere just to know what they're doing. But just to make sure that they have space and that they can talk with their partners.
Great. You guys did really well.
Now you can feel free to go back to your normal seats. Alright guys, bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna get out of the way for you guys. The next technique we have is called binder control. According to Lamov, certain freedoms that students have are kind of overrated. For example, having the freedom to have a binder like so. Do you guys ever remember having that one student in class who just decided they were going to take notes? A depository for my snack cracker. That's nice. I had this right before. And also there's just all these issues with terms of like how students feel that a piece of paper like this is going to work taking notes on. Frankly, Lamov says that that's kind of ridiculous, and frankly we should take control on how our students take notes and such and such. So basically, the whole purpose of binder control is to care enough about and demonstrate the importance of what you teach to build a system for the storage, organization, and recall of what your students have learned. Basically, it's implementing a system of note-taking and also gathering control of like how the students take it. So basically, what you do is you require a binder, and if possible, more of a guarantee that they will have all their material together to help them learn. But obviously, there are certain weaknesses. The biggest thing that I found was cost. I can't really see a time or a place where I will actually have the ability to buy all of my students' binders and give them all to them. And also, there is the kind of danger of limiting students in terms of how they go about like their learning. For example, like I never really bought into the whole standard of note taking. I would always do it my own way, and I found that I did fine. So sometimes there's a certain drawback that you're kind of like limiting students' ability to devise their own metacognitive systems of information. So, anyways, that's binder control.
Okay, this technique's called 100%. It's basically that you want 100% of your students on task, focused, and listening to you 100% of the time. This technique gives ways to intervene quickly and as invisibly as you can. And it's also a technique used to not disrupt your whole class when you have one or two students off task. So we have a video that is going to
Can we go back, Leslie?
Sorry.
We should have made you guys do what we did.
Mostly just the purpose.
Yeah. Everybody good?
And this is a video just to kind of give you a picture of what they look like.
You also get the joy of hearing Doug Lamov speak directly to you. That's really nice.
One of the techniques you'll read about in the book is called 100%. It's about how champion teachers get 100% of students to do what they ask 100% of the time. That may sound like a recipe for conflict, but when you watch champions at work, you see that it's all about finesse. First, like Colleen Driggs, champions use the least invasive form of intervention. The idea is to avoid breaking the thread of instruction. Colleen corrects with hand gestures, and that means the teaching goes on. If you've got one kid who's off task and you interrupt the task for everyone to fix it, you'll end up with 3 more kids off task. And when you stop to fix them, it will happen again. Minimally invasive correction helps avoid that death spiral. Champions like Bob Zimmerly are also careful about keeping correction private and impossible.
I need 3 people. You know who you are. I need 2 people.
Even in a more explicit correction, Jamie Volante focuses on describing the solution, not the problem. And she makes her correction an exercise in purpose. The problem is the student's not getting the answer right, not power. But like all 100% teachers, she's consistent about correcting every time she can.
And then when I asked you a question, you didn't have the answer. That tells me you need to work harder if you're going to get the right answer. Your eyes should be on the speaker at all times.
Even with all this finesse, you can't always keep your correction of an off-task student private. Champions limit the amount of time when corrected students are on stage with other eyes on them. Here, Bob manages to move the class's attention to something positive almost immediately after a public correction.
I don't have Marissa, but I do have Jasmine.
All of which gets you to the point where you can move your students from behave to believe to achieve.
Okay, well, so as you can see, there's 3 principles to this technique. The first one is called, or is stated, use the least invasive form of intervention. The slide should come up in a second. But there's a couple sub-techniques to it. The first one is nonverbal, when you saw the teacher walk over and just snap in the kid's face because he wasn't paying attention. And she's still able to keep her lecture going, but she got the attention of the student that wasn't paying attention. So that one's called nonverbal. Then there's anonymous individual correction, where the
Anonymous individual correction is basically you're addressing the entire group. However, you are stating to the entire group that there is a student or multiple students who are not paying attention. So basically, like you said, in the video, you saw the man say, "I need 3 people. I need to people. So it's basically saying to the entire group, there's someone here that's not paying attention, we need them, but that way we're not calling out on the student.
And then there's private individual, when you saw the teacher lean over and kneel over next to the student who wasn't doing what she was supposed to and said, you're not going to learn if you can't do what you're supposed to. But so she wasn't calling her out in front of the whole class, but she was addressing the problem while the rest of the students were working. And then there's positive group correction, where you saw, okay, there's the last two kind of go hand in hand. There's positive group correction, and there's lightning quick public correction, where this teacher said, I don't remember the name, Marissa. I don't have Marissa, but I have Joe. So he called out Marissa in front of the whole class and told her she needed to pay attention, but then quickly redirected the attention of the class to what was supposed to be going on.
Should be great.
So the next principle is having guidelines. Basically find ways to make it easier for you to know if your students are paying attention. So if you want your students to be looking forward, so you say, when everyone's finished, I need your eyes. So you make it so that the eyes are directly, if you say, I want your eyes directly on me. So it makes it easier for you to know if the students are looking at you. Otherwise, you have students just looking straight in front of the classroom. Or another one that Lamont said was pencils down, which is easier to identify if every student's pencil is down. Make sure your students know that you're looking. So if you have students that aren't up, like their eyes aren't on you, make sure they know that you know that their eyes aren't on you, so that they don't think that they only have to do it half the time. And kind of off of that, avoid marginal compliance. So say you say, if you're listening to me, I want your hand up. Is their hand straight all the way up, or is their hand halfway on the desk, over here? Make sure that the students know from the beginning, when I say I need your attention, your hand is straight up, so that you know you don't have people halfway doing it. And make following the rules a habit and a culture in your classroom. So just make sure that you're always enforcing it, and it's not half the time you're enforcing it, half the time you just move on without half the class doing what you asked. So the next principle is rely on firm, calm finesse. So this technique is really all about your language and how you ask the students to do what you're asking them. Make it so that it's in your students' best interest. So, for example, eyes on me so that you can learn, not eyes on me because I want your eyes on me and that's what I'm asking. Just so they think it's about them and it's not about you having authority over them.
So, who feels like 100% beat Israel? Only Jessica.
Why do you think that? I think it would be difficult because if I have 99% of my class, I think that's not possible. We'll start off difficult. But if I have the majority of my class, I'm going to want to move on because most of them are there. And we only have a limited amount of time with each student and each class. And I want to be able to reach all the or get all the material.
Before you guys get going, the next slide, go through it. You can tweet your questions now in case you lose the line. I'm going to take them out for about a minute. Okay.
I worry with 100% that you risk escalating conflicts with students if you're dead set you have to have 100% students all the time. You have a student who just is not good with it, you don't move around 100% like that. I don't see that it's worth interrupting or to continually have to go back to that student 100% of the time to do that. It seems a bit Machiavellian to me, but
The point that he always makes is you always have to start off like this as a habit from the very beginning, and also there is still scaffolding. That's why we have all those different techniques on how to do 100%. You can do anonymous individual group correction. You can go directly to the student and say, you haven't been really participating, or you haven't been listening to me, or listening and we want you to learn, so et cetera, et cetera. So scaffolding and just immediately setting it into the school, into the class environment. Kendall?
I think that binder control and 100% would be difficult for students who might learn differently.
Yeah, and I looked at binder control for a long time, and I personally have decided that have their own system of building, like, of learning. Like, I never bought into, I have to take notes this specific way. However, he's suggesting that there is still a standard that you have to set, and that students still need to take ownership of their learning, and they need to show that in their notes and in their binder. So you need to set that standard. Michelle?
Yeah, I think finding control is good as long as you don't grade it, because like I do not have a neat binder or a neat notebook or anything like that. So in middle school, I would always get marked off even though I was like understanding the material. So I think it's good if it's structured, but it's not like put into the grade, because that was always really frustrating to me, because I'd be doing all of my work correctly, but then my binder would not be up to par.
I mean, I personally can't see why it'd be a grade, because that's not really an assessment of their actual learning. That's just an assessment to see if they follow directions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. If you have more questions, you can put them on Twitter and we'll keep answering them and talking to you guys. We should all keep talking, because these techniques are fun to talk about, but we have to be done. Sorry. Next year, Pastor, go.
Any, is there somebody who's just like dying to get something answered before we move on?
This is really pertinent.
Okay, give them some love.
Alright.